news, and if you're just like Mike, he follows a lot of the same stuff we do, which if Hector's listening is going to say that makes him wrong. But we like him in studio. Hector's not here, so we're going to have a good time. David, say hello.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
We're really excited. I think it's going to be a really good show. For those of you that do follow us, we're excited because he's got a much bigger following. So we're glad to have him in studio.
And if you don't believe us, go to his site and you'll see. And his site is?
DavidPakman.com. It's P-A-K-M-A-N.
Right, P-A-K-M-A-N.
You know, it's been a wild week. I know that Arvin's been working hard on all the emails, phone calls, trying to keep everything back and forth. A lot of you that were listening last week, we went a little bit off kilter from what our normal show was, and want to thank the folks that came out on Friday to support. Jenny McCarthy and team was very happy for the show of good faith. You know, it was a good showing. We're going to push some of her causes in the next few weeks. And no, there will not be any more lingerie basketball players in studio anytime soon.
Did you guys have the Jenny McCarthy I'm thinking of in studio?
She actually called in. Jenny McCarthy
I see.
was our first caller last week, but she was helping push the... Mike, what is the physical name for the team?
It was the lingerie basketball team. There's a league out here in California. It's lingerie basketball. Ladies, obviously, playing in lingerie.
Right, I figured that.
Yeah. You know, and it was great. I mean, we're doing a show. We're thinking we're going into our normal flow, and there's three gorgeous women show up in uniform, and it went downhill from there.
Now, I have to say, you guys know about the Jenny McCarthy autism vaccine situation, right? Did that come up at all when she was on?
We talked about her causes, but we didn't talk about the vaccine.
Yeah, because that's a whole. I mean, I think she got banned. I don't know for sure. For people who don't know, she started claiming that I guess it's her kid.
Right.
Became autistic because of the MMR vaccine, and lo and behold, this was all based on the work of Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who put out this study based on 12 kids, which is not really scientifically significant if we're talking about 12.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it turns out that it was just a hoax, that there's actually no connection between autism and the MMR vaccine. And I interviewed Seth Mnookin, who did a whole expose about Dr. Andrew Wakefield in Vanity Fair, and it just wasn't science. And I think, I don't know for sure, but that she's backed off a little bit on some of those claims. But then someone else told me, she says she thinks it anyway. She's sure anyway. I'm not sure where she's at now with that.
We didn't talk about that with her, but you know what?
Probably good that you didn't.
She's not the only one who still believes that. Though.
No, of course.
You have millions of parents that probably have not given their kids that vaccine because of that
Right.
supposed study.
And what's unbelievable is that Dr. Andrew Wakefield actually had a potential money interest in a measles-only vaccine, which was being touted as safer. Instead of getting the MMR, get just the measles one. Oh, and by the way, I'm involved with a company that could make a ton of money if people start getting the measles vaccine only. It's
See, and then, but that becomes the
So
problem.
you're saying that money has something to do with this?
I think money might have had an effect on that.
Huh.
Now, I will say this for her. We didn't talk about the vaccine. What she did say was that it's still an important cause to her. You know, we know autism's a problem, or not a problem, but I mean, it's a situation in America that a lot of people are passionate about. As far as what caused it, you know, whatever blames lie or whatever claims are made, no, we didn't get into any of that with her. She kept it pretty straightforward.
I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up.
Yeah, well,
Plus, we had some nice guests in studio.
Yeah, why ruin it?
It kind of threw us off our game.
For sure.
you know, we're going to switch gears. So again, those of you who participated, thank you. And, you know, we do want to thank Jenny for sending us the tickets. For those of you that have been watching the news today, and if you're news junkies like I want to believe the three of us are, I don't want to speak for David, but he's saying yes he is. Wow, was the news cycle insane. The last 24 hours have seen everything from car bombs in Detroit on a lawyer and his two sons, to the Taliban saying that they did not kill Rabini. They're actually backing off from it, which is weird. To we had, you know, somebody executed in Texas. The execution in Georgia was held back, but I'm looking online now that says that it's going to go forward. We're trying to figure out, I'm at least trying to get some more updated information. It has just been an insane news cycle.
It has been crazy for sure, and let's not forget Ron Suskind's book, you know, and all the controversy that's kind of triggered that.
Well, you know, what's funny is I'm not as big of a follower of Suskind as you are. You were telling me, when Mike and I were doing our pre-production, he was saying that I had caught a lot of the hoopla late, and I bought the Audible book yesterday, and I started listening to a lot of the excerpts.
I forgot how to read.
You know, I swear, the older I get, my ADD kicks in, and I can read to prepare for the show. But you put a 600-page book in front of me, and I don't know, it just...
Unless it's Harry Potter.
Then it's fine, yeah. You know, I was interviewed on Monday on KPFA by Mitch Jeserich, and he asked me about what I thought about the Ron Suskind situation. And I think the more that the White House or anybody in power wants to discredit a book, the more likely that it's what's in the book is true. That's
Absolutely.
my sense of it.
I agree with you. 100%.
If it was just BS, they wouldn't even talk about it. They wouldn't address it. They wouldn't care.
You see, and that's part of the thing that Mike and I and several of our associates, where I get into trouble because that's when they called me a political whore, or I'm sorry, Gary called me a political slut because he says I bounce back and forth. But my whole thing was, you know, I voted for him. I want the man to succeed. I believe in our government. I want this country to work. But sometimes when you hear certain things, if you hear it once, you hear it twice, you hear it 3 times, maybe there's some truth to it. Then, like you say, when there's an entire book and all of a sudden everyone's out against the book, it makes you wonder.
For sure.
Plus the thing, you know, it's not like it was Andrew Breitbart. It was Ron Suskind, and the guy's, from my point of view, he's pretty legit. So,
He has a track record of doing real journalism.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, how can you argue with the guy? I mean, and again, now I guess he's playing some of the audio interviews to try to, you know, put that to rest. So I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Now the thing is, I always have to say, whenever we talk about, anytime I hear somebody say, well, the guy has a good track record, or I agree with him on all stuff, you know what I think about? I think about an interview when Bill Maher was on with Larry King. You guys remember Larry King, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Who can forget Larry King? And I agree with Bill Maher about a lot of stuff, but then Bill Maher has a really weird thing about medication and medicine and the healthcare industry. And I agree with a lot of his stuff, but once he said that aspirin makes no sense. He said, why would anyone ever take an aspirin? Is your body in an aspirin deficient state that needs aspirin to be put back in? And I said, that's one of the dumbest things. That's not how a lot of medication works.
Right.
How could you really think that and think that's a good argument against aspirin?
Right.
There's many things we can say. So I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean everything. You know, so we have to, I think, still analyze the book for individually. We can't just say just because Ron Suskind has a good track record, everything in the book is true.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But and the point that you made earlier is absolutely true. When somebody, an administration, is fighting it so hard, and they're releasing statements and that kind of thing, now you got to really look at it.
Absolutely.
Well, and again, I've always said it, we take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, when Bush came out with his book, we read that one.
You read that one.
I've been enduring the sheer pain of Dick Cheney in my time. I made the mistake again of going Audible, and what's so funny is listening
It's
to
not narrated by him, is it?
I was going to say, who reads it?
He does.
Oh, he does read
Really?
it?
Him and his daughter.
Oh.
And I just, I had a hard enough time listening to him speak before. Wow, I got to tell you, when my ears were bleeding after I got through the first few chapters a couple of weeks ago, I got to go back to it and finish it. And I know he's sincere. He believes what he's saying. And
Do
it's
you
in with
really
the
think that? I don't. Hold on a second. When Dick Cheney says, when he's asked about Colin Powell going in front and making the claim with the bad intelligence, and he's asked about it, I don't remember which interview it was in, and Dick Cheney says something like, well, Colin Powell's the one who went and made that case. So talk to Colin Powell about the intelligence. He knows that's disingenuous.
Right.
He knows he was one of the key players in pushing Colin Powell to make this case that Iraq had the weapons of mass destruction. How can he sincerely say, hey, talk to Colin Powell, he presented the intelligence? Who gave him the intelligence? He's not procuring that intelligence himself.
And you're absolutely right. But when I say that he's sincere about it, whether or not he's lied to himself enough times and now he believes it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You know, but I'm saying when he says it with such conviction. And again, I roll my eyes, and I agree with you. You know, and I found some of it where, again, I had high respects for Colin Powell. I still do. You know, I think the fact that he left and he did what he did, and a lot of people badmouthed him, at least in my opinion.
On what part?
Wait, you're saying that he did what he did in terms of making that case, or he did what he did in terms of afterwards coming out and saying, it was not. I was not comfortable with this intelligence. I was pushed to make the case.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
I think is commendable. To actually be honest.
You know, and where a lot of people chastised him, and I think that's where the book goes into how Cheney did pass the buck on it. You know, Mike and I talk about, look, you have a commander in chief, you do certain things. You know, I mean, he had to come out afterwards and eat crow, and I felt bad for the guy, but at least it was more commendable that he came back and said, this is why I could no longer stay.
Yeah, I think as far as the Dick Cheney interviews, I think Dick Cheney and his daughter are living in a fantasy world. I mean, just the other day, his daughter, is it Liz Cheney, the one that wrote the
Yes.
book?
Yes.
She said to Bill O'Reilly, when he said, you know, your dad said we were going to be greeted as liberators, and we weren't. She actually said, actually we were. We were greeted as liberators, just not by the same people that we expected to be greeted as liberators by.
That's
What
the
kind
thing,
of an
man.
explanation is that?
Well, that's the perfect Cheney spin, man. They're going to turn any situation to their advantage.
We were
regardless.
liberators. It was just not the people that mattered that greeted us that way.
Right, right.
Well, and again, I haven't gotten through the whole
We
book.
were greeted as liberators by the oil companies after, you know, we split up the oil fields.
Yeah,
and
we liberated their
Yeah.
ability to make
So-
huge amounts of money.
So, yeah, we, you know.
Well, I mean, somebody had to make the money. Come
And
on,
the shareholders at Halliburton, you know,
Well,
they
Halliburton
greeted
wasn't
them
going to run itself.
by, you know, right.
Yeah, somebody had to go in there and take care of business for them.
I guess.
So, you know, it's weird. But, you know, you're right. When he says it on these guys, but you know what? It's not just Cheney. It's a bunch of them. But
Yeah, of course.
when
And
they
it's
say
Democrats too.
Oh, absolutely. On both sides of the aisle. I mean, we always have this argument. We talk about it. You know, I mean, there's maybe a handful of good people up there in the Congress that are not bought and paid for. That we, you know, not as obvious as all the other ones. But these guys, when they say it's like a sickness. They believe what they're saying, regardless of what the facts are.
I actually don't know that I believe. I do think you're right that a lot of these guys get so wrapped up in it, and we know that both CEOs and politicians are much more likely to be psychopaths than the
Right,
average
right.
person. So in other words, they may actually believe the things they're saying. I think a lot of them are just experts at knowing what to say, what people want to think they believe. I don't think all these guys really are as strong in their own beliefs as you're saying they are.
So you think back in the private meetings, in the private rooms, where
They're
where
candid.
They're candid, and
Yeah.
they're like, you know what? That was a good load I just fed these guys.
I think so.
You know, some of the old black and white movies during the 40s and 50s, they show that kind of stuff, where, you know, the collusion that went on with a lot of the oil companies and the big business. And like you see, these guys would sit around, some of the older, before the Playboy Club, but, you know, some of these types of, I wouldn't even call it a speakeasy, but high-end restaurants. And to your point, they would sit there, make these deals, and laugh about some of the statements they'd have to make. And they were movies, but you wonder where some of that came from, and if that still continues to this day, where
Of course it
we've got
continues.
guys on both sides of the aisle, but at the end of the day, when they're having a drink, saying, hey, you know, I got to do what I got to do to keep my job, and
I'm sure that had to be the case when they had the oil company executives in front of Congress, and they didn't want to put them under oath. And was it the oil companies were crap?
tobacco.
No. It was reason. It was oil, and they were talking about the pricing or whatever, and the statements these guys were making. It was just like, holy crap, man. You know, it was just blatant lies, man. But you know.
Every once in a while in those hearings, a lot of those hearings are just grandstanding and
Right.
showboating,
Right.
and let's get something on the record just so we can say we had a hearing. Every once in a while you'll get, like I recently saw the documentary Tapped about bottled water.
Right.
And there's
So that one-
some segments in there where John Kerry from
Right.
Massachusetts, my home state of Massachusetts, was in there, and he was saying to some of the people he was questioning, you are doing something that is downright unacceptable. There is not oversight. Do you consider this honest? And he was grilling people, and sometimes Kucinich will grill people. Sometimes Barney Frank grills
Right.
people. But on the whole, it's a lot of showboating that goes on at those hearings.
It is, and you know, and then sometimes you just get frustrated with the system and how it's working or how you perceive it to not be working for the most part. And we talk about this. How can we change that? I mean, there is really no way, in my view,
Yeah.
to change it.
I think it's not attainable necessarily, but it all comes from money, and campaign finance reform is a big deal. If we had term limits, which I'm not one of these big term limits guys that constantly talks about it, but if there were term limits, and if financing was not just anybody can just donate money, there's a set amount of money, you run a campaign, you have certain access to TV and radio, and you're not thinking about being a career politician, you're eliminating the incentive to do
Right.
a lot of this stuff. Yes, it's possible that people could still take money illegally, right? You're not gonna, with campaign finance reform, if somebody wants to take money illegally, that will still happen. It's just this is unreasonable. Why would anyone who got to power with the system we have change it? They wouldn't.
Right, it's never going to happen. So, I mean, we're stuck with the system, and I think the only thing you can do is, I mean, if you don't like it, you're going to have to get active from the ground up. You know, join your party, join your local precinct. You know, get involved.
But we talk
And
about
try
this
to
all the
change it
time,
that
though,
way,
is
yeah.
that you've always called them the low-informed voter, or the, what do you call them?
Yeah, low information.
Low
voters,
information
right?
voters.
It's just-
My whole thing is that, you know, we look back at what our grandparents and some of the others did. People today, for as angry as they get, it lasts about 12 seconds. They're more upset when Snooki, you know, got in trouble in Italy or wherever they were on Jersey Shore than they do about what's going on here.
No, that's true. And if you go to any news media outlet, I mean, the most clicked stories are about entertainment. You know, that's
It's, you know, Amy Winehouse's
Right.
dad says maybe she was only on 2 types of drugs instead of 3. That's
Right.
the big news.
they'll bypass all the important stuff that really could affect their lives
Yeah.
and go straight for a lot of the crap, you know. So
Yeah, and that's part of the big problem. But I mean, again, the book is out. Read it for yourself. You know, again, if you want to torture yourself, it's 22 hours of read. If you do the Audible book, I am about 9 hours in, and yeah, that's going to be an interesting one for me.
yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one for everybody, man. For a lot of people. You know, just segueing a little bit, David, because I kind of want to talk about what you do, your show.
Yeah.
And because I mean, you're a very accomplished guy out there, and I'm hearing some feedback over here. So I just wanted to see what's going on.
Are you guys listening to a different show? while you guys do the show?
I was like,
Either that or we're not even on the air right now. Are we on break?
nah.
There's a whole...
We're listening to a different show out here.
Obviously.
No, all right. Okay, we're going to our first break. We'll be right back. We have David Pacman in studio. Please stick around. You're listening to the Three Guys Rant on AdrenalineRadio.com. We'll be right back.
How long are
Sorry
your
about
breaks?
It's about 2 minutes,
Okay.
2.5 minutes. It's freaking hot in here, huh?
Yeah, you want to bring it down?
I was trying to play the commercial, but for some reason the file was missing. So it jumped. It was jumping to the Pollo commercial, and I was like, "Why don't they hear the music?" But I guess yeah. It was,
Yeah, no, there was nothing coming through, so that's why we were. Mikey, can you find anything and see if I'm not getting the update on whether or not they're gonna